From Inazuma's folklore, when this land was yet to be called Inazuma, there was only this patch of land separate from the continent, a land where these tiny creatures called the Tanuki lived, mischievous in their own right, yet gentle and kind to those other than their kind. Then came the Kitsune, wise beings learned in powerful types of magic. The two races clashed in a struggle for the dominion of the land, a war that lasted for thousands of years. Eventually, they settled to share the land between them, and soon, more races came inhabiting the land. Oni, Tengu, Baku, Mujina, Nekomata, all different races who are now collectively called the Youkai. As the Youkai grew in numbers, a sudden great flood came to the land, dividing it into different islands, turning it to an archipelago as we can see now. Then came the early humans, survivors of the Great War that caused the flood. Settling into the land, the Youkai saw them as mere invaders, yet years would pass by and the relationship between Youkai and humanity would grow brighter. Here, two identical gods descended to the land and came into power. From Lightning and Shadow saw the birth of the twin gods, Makoto and Ei. With their power, they defeated numerous gods and saw the rise of the shogunate, while naming the land as Narukami. Soon, they were surrounded with powerful allies whose bloodlines were from the powerful Youkai. Here, regarded as Makoto's Kagemusha, Ei established long friendships who gave her strength and sanity from the countless wars she fought. However, these friends would all leave her in the end. The three friends, each coming from a bloodline of different Youkai, the Oni, Tengu, and Kitsune, all have so many stories to be told, so let's talk about it. Compared to what we have in the present Inazuma, the Youkai were greater in number and each had their own territories. One thing I noticed is that most Youkai only lived in Narukami Island, with the exception of the Tanuki, who seem to appear in Yashori and Serai Islands. I'm guessing that with the Kitsune, they inhabit the Byaku Plains up to the borders of the Chinju Forest. As for the Tengu, they inhabit some parts of Mount Yogo, since it was mentioned that was a place where Kujosara was found when she was young. As for the Oni, it's possible that they inhabit some parts of the Byaku Plains alongside the Kitsune. It was noted that the Oni used to live far from human villages, so here is the best guess. Lastly, the Tanuki, who we all know live mostly in Chinju Forest. Now, with the Tengu bloodline, the famed arts of Tengu archery is well known throughout Inazuma, yet there is little we know about their origins or how they came to Inazuma as opposed to the Kitsune and the Tanuki. They have black wings that can appear if they want to, and wear a crow mask by the side of their heads. These masks are a symbol of their heritage, so they regard them with great importance. Some other traits include their incredible speed, which is highlighted in the weapon Hakushin Ring. So far, there have been only 4 Tengu mentioned in any part of the game, whether it be books, archives, or in-game quests. Let's start with the great Tengu of Yogo, Sasayori, a close ally to Ei and Makoto and a general during the first Watatsumi Narukami War. This first war was set after the period of the Arkan War ended, with Ei and Sasayori both meeting the forces of Orobashi at Yashori Island. By this time, Sasayori held the title of the Great Tengu of Yogo, since it was referred to numerous times from the weapons Akumaru and Moon's Moon. It can be argued that Sasayori was the first who held the title, as it could have been bestowed upon by Makoto and Ei. Now, I have this thing that I want to talk about. Feel free to comment down below if I missed some detail here. So, by this time, I think it's possible that both Kitsune Saigu and Chiyo hadn't known Sasayori. If we read both of their accounts, they never once mentioned Sasayori and were only referring to Rezenbo, since she was the holder of the Great Tengu title in their time. I have reason to think that those teasers we saw of them hanging out are only from Ei's perspective, as she was the one present in all those times. The question I keep asking since the teaser was released is that during the first Watatsumi Narukami War, why didn't Chiyo and Kitsune Saigu join them when they went to Yashori Island? While there is the case that the threat is far from Narukami compared to what happened with the Abyss invasion, it still doesn't make sense that they wouldn't join in the fight. Possibly them being there could lead to fewer deaths, and maybe even preventing Sasayori's death in the battle. So as I said, if I missed some detail about this or you guys have some idea, feel free to comment it down below and I'll pin it. Now turning to the successor of the great Tengu title, Rezenbo. She was a close friend and the bodyguard to Kitsune Saigu, as well as the wielder of the Thundering Pulse. In her time, she had 3 disciples, namely the Yogo 3, all of which had many great feats in their lifetime. In training the Yogo 3, Rezenbo would invite her students to her mansion, the empty boat of 1,000 records. This time was set 600 to 500 years ago. When the cataclysm happened, Rezenbo lost her friend in Kitsune Saigu to abyssal corruption and was traumatized with her passing. Since then, she disappeared from the record books and tales of Inazuma's past. Her whereabouts after the cataclysm has since been unknown. However, there is this little text we can read in the same domain in Araumi. Reading its original translation, it was indicated that a person fled here and lived in seclusion ever since, up until the mansion in the form of a ship sunk to the bottom of the depths. It's reasonable to believe that Rezenbo spent the rest of her days here in this ship and died as it sank. Thus, when we first try to activate this domain, it is submerged in water, as well as finding sunken ships on the way there. As the next Tengu, with Teruyo, the said daughter of Rezenbo and the one who dueled with one of Chiyo's sons. Teruyo was responsible for giving him the name of Iwakura to allow him to forget his old heritage and start a new sword art named the Iwakura art. There is little to know about Teruyo, but apparently their duel lasted for 13 years, reading the memories stored within the Earth Kitsune near Mount Yogo. Lastly, with Sara, a Tengu adopted into the Kujo clan, serving now as the general for the shogunate army. There is this possibility that Sara is a descendant of Teruyo, since we know little about what happened to Teruyo after her duel with Michihiro, and I believe this to be the case. As part of the Kujo clan, 500 years ago, Kujo Shigeyori built the fortress and established the Kujo encampment on the battlefield front in Kanazuka. Because of this, the clan's descendants, including Sara, inherited military engineering skills, which was shown with the Kujo encampment and during the Second Watatsumi Narukami War. Now with the Kitsune roaming around Narukami, were once vast in number and, interestingly enough, could speak. As a race of wise and gentle beings, they were cared for by their matriarch, who started from the Hakushin clan and would soon pass on the Hakushin bloodline. Little is known about this matriarch. We know that the Kitsune worship her as their priestess, as well as establishing an order of shrines across Narukami. This matriarch eventually created the Grand Narukami Shrine, in training for fellow Kitsune or other humans to serve and maintain the land. We also know that in a long list of successors, Kitsune Saigu would be the one chosen to inherit the title, as noted from her comment in the weapon Hakushin ring. Kitsune Saigu, who was the current priestess at the time of 500 years ago, was a key factor in mentoring both Asase Hibiki and Yae Miko. From various stories about Kitsune Saigu, she met many friends in her time roaming around the human villages and festivals in Inazuma. One time she met a lost boy who owned the retracing bolide set, meeting the Nagonohara family at the time and having a rival relationship with Tanuki Ioroi. From all sources, she was the Kitsune with white fur as shown in the teaser. In mentoring Miko during her early form as a Kitsune, she was preparing her for the title of Guji Yae, the soon-to-be careholder of the Grand Narukami Shrine and its shrine maidens. However, her teachings to Miko were cut short when she was corrupted by the Abyss during the Cataclysm and shortly died from its effects. With her passing, Miko was devastated and eventually took her role more seriously, even becoming distant with her longtime friend and classmate, Mizuki. So as the next successor of the Hakushin bloodline, Miko would be known as Yae Miko ever since, up until she passes this responsibility and title to another of her kind. With Yae Miko as the current successor, She has also gained a popular role as the founder and manager of the Youkai publishing house, writing light novels from various writers across Teyvat. Now, moving past that, we turn to the Oni who value their principles with pride. Inazuman folktale tells that the Oni bloodline first started with a story about a blue Oni, Ao, and a crimson Oni, Aka, who had different approaches with humans. One was more seclusive and the other wanted more interaction with humanity. For context, the Oni race was feared and were fewer in numbers compared to the Kitsune and Tanuki. They wanted protection from the shogun, but in order to get it, they must establish a peaceful relationship with the humans. Since then, this well-established mutual relationship between humans and Oni can be traced to Chiyo, since I believe she saw them as equals and even adopted a human for a son. It might bring her huge pride knowing that her adopted son continued the Mikoshi name and restored the family honor. With Chiyo, since we all pretty much know her backstory, I think there's an interesting detail with the legacy of her biological son, Mikoshi Michihiro, the one who started the Iwakura sword art. It tells that the Iwakura art was taught to many samurai across Inazuma, and when the Sakoku decree was put into effect, these samurai turned into the Kairagi. In Chiyo's death, her arm and horn were cut from the damage of Ei's Musono Hitotachi. If you notice the Kairagi's helmets, one of their horns in their helmet is also cut off. This is also in the case of the Magukenki's appearance. Since the Magukenki was based on Michihiro's appearance, could it be possible that Michihiro wanted one of its horns to be cut off as a remembrance to what happened with his mother, Mikoshi Chiyo? This means that Chiyo's manner of death was written together in designing the region of Inazuma. Since Chiyo's death, we only have one playable character carrying the Oni blood, with Arataki Ito. However, Ito and Chiyo are unrelated, since Ito comes from a different Oni tribe, with his predecessor being the Otogi King, the wielder of the Red Horn Stone Thresher. This Otogi King was also present during Chiyo and Kitsune Saigu's time, but their whereabouts after the cataclysm is unknown. It's only said that this Otogi King experienced loneliness after their deaths. With this, Ei and Makoto had some powerful allies in their time, which can be argued that this was Inazuma's golden age, since most yokai and humans lived peacefully together, as well as having a peaceful contact with the Watatsumi people during Orobashi's time. However, with the cataclysm, the number of yokai across Narukami dwindled, and its bloodlines are becoming less and less prevalent in the current times. Still, their legacies are carried by the yokai we currently have in Sara, Yaimiko, Ito, Mizuki, Yoroi, and Sai. So, as the Mikama Flower Festival ended, I realized that there are more secrets to be answered in Inazuma. The mystery behind this ruler comes from the Court of Flowing Sands, or the white tree mentioned in the Momiji Died Court, as well as the ruins in Araumi and Fort Mume. So, as always, thank you for watching this video. If you wish to add more or correct some errors I made, you can always comment down below, and we'll make sure to read them. My name is KlemenTime. As usual, be safe and stay tuned.